Take 3. I've been checking down on things and trying to make sure I didn't have like a loose connection or something. I haven't really been able to find a whole lot. I just double checked to make sure all the connections were pretty solid. Honestly, if it wasn't having good connection, it wouldn't be running like this. But the fact that it's not running consistently is a little concerning. I mean, the next mod I have an idea on. I might have to do to try to see if I can adjust the. Like, I don't know if this is just the ISO bus is starting to get flooded a little too hard on 25 megahertz because I'm doing a 25 ISO only. I mean, I guess I could probably try to test that out by running the WinBond controller on here and trying to do the same test. Or if it's something about either the memory or the graphics adapter getting overheated. That one looks like a good one. Okay. I believe that should be over 40 frames per second. I'm going to have to do the math and put it in the description. Now I'm going to explain what I did, because it wasn't as easy as just plugging the card, unfortunately. Well, first, this is a really good ISA controller, IDE controller. This is a Gold Star Prime 2. I followed a little bit of a lead on forums for this one. This here is a WD-90C31. I threw a heatsink on here. It doesn't have much warmth to it, but it was getting a little warm, and I figured I'd just do that. Is this getting warm? This might be, yeah, this might be what's overheating. I might have to put a heatsink on this one. And these are only 79 nanosecond memory. The clock generator here was only generating, and actually it was generating what was recommended, of 44.9 megahertz for the memory clock. I found some unmarked, essentially jumpers on the board. This is 0, 1, and 2. And I followed the table, and then I adjusted it to 50 megahertz, worked better. Adjusted to 60 megahertz, worked under 25 megahertz ISIS bus like this. So that's why I knew it really couldn't be that. That's not really the problem. To get it more consistent, I probably do need to put a heatsink on this chip as well. Because yeah, it's starting to actually get really warm. So I might want to actually turn this off real quick. We're just pushing these chips to like ridiculous lengths, because this card right here is only known for approximately one thing, and that's being slightly faster than the ET4000. And all the benchmarks I've seen, it was always 1 frame per second faster than the ET4000. So I thought maybe it would work. I didn't have one, and I didn't think I would get one, so I was like, well, I guess I won't do that. And then I got one. This also has 70 nanosecond memory. This one here doesn't seem to work properly. I'm wondering if maybe it's possible to do the same kind of. I don't know if the leads actually go off to any place where I could actually do jumpers, because those jumpers are related to video frequency and all that. But it would be real nice if I could just adjust the memory clock on this one, and it would work perfectly. Maybe. It's possible the memory's also pad, so. Yeah. I tested this out at 16.67 megahertz and got pretty consistently 37.5 frames per second. And once I got it to once I overclocked the memory to 50 megahertz, I was getting 38. Like almost dead on 38. And getting at 60 megahertz, well, at 50 megahertz memory clock, this wasn't working. This was the Doom was coming out as brown with white dots, basically. With this, at 60 megahertz, which shouldn't be possible because the datasheet says maximum memory clock for 70 nanoseconds is 44.4 megahertz, and it's running slightly higher than that. It was doing 44.9, but that would be like a rounding error at that point. All these 70 nanosecond chips running at 60 megahertz, it works. It may not work as consistently as I'd like it to. And like I said, I'm going to work on seeing if I can make it more consistent by adding another heatsink on this, on the AT&T DAC over here. It's like things are getting hot. I don't want it getting hot. I'd be actually kind of like to have this to be almost like a semi-permanent build, although I wouldn't want to use this motherboard for it because this motherboard is really intended for a VLB build. But if I could try to get another motherboard with just ISO slots, and I just slot these two in, and then I find a sound card that can actually operate at the 25 megahertz frontside bus, I mean not frontside bus, the ISO bus, which, given that I found two cards that'll work, maybe a third one might be possible? That's the other thing. It's possible maybe this ISO card is interfering a little bit, but I doubt that's really the issue. Yeah, there might actually be a viable 46, or rather 5x86 because of the AMD card. Just as a reminder, 50 megahertz frontside bus, 150 megahertz processor, 1 megabyte cache, 64 megabytes RAM, EDO. Doesn't really matter as much because this motherboard doesn't seem to be made for anything higher than fast page, but apparently it's compatible with EDO for some reason. This is a M912, as you see. This is the 1.0 version, so I can't use a Pentium overdrive. Honestly, I would love to play games with the frontside bus, but this will not go over 150 megahertz. If I could do a little more games with the frontside bus to like 60 megahertz or 66 megahertz, and then have this run at like 108. See, that's the problem. You can't go that high. Like you're still tripling whatever you're adjusting frontside bus, you're tripling it. So I'd have to at least run it at least 180 megahertz. It doesn't seem like there's any real way to make it only double. If I could only double it, then I could probably adjust the frontside bus to like 66 megahertz and have this run at like 120, 132, which would be about where it should be. And then the whole system might work faster, but the cache might complain. Yeah, I've had some ideas as to how to improve this setup, but I think I wanted to just concentrate on the ISA video card, and since I finished this part of things, I can pull it out and show you just how silly. There's three solder pads: R11, R8, R10, and R10. R11 is 0, R10 is 1, and R8 is 2. They go to the clock to set the memory clock speed. And these 70 nanoseconds were working just fine. I have an idea for another modification, which might do, might not, of these chips here are used to interface with the ISA bus. The ISA bus is expected to run at around 8 megahertz. These max out at, I think, they said they max out at like 40 or some megahertz, but they also create a delay in the system. I saw a version of this that had 74F245s on. I thought I was getting that. Didn't get that because apparently there was two cards, and this is the other card that wasn't on pictured. Cool. But I have a little strip of TI F245s. So if I adjust this and get the 245s on the bus, maybe it squeezes some more out. Part of me kind of doubts it though, because it's possible that's not really what's limiting things anymore. Because it does feel like it's like the memory clock is really the limiting factor now. Because what was happening was when it was running at 44.5 megahertz, when you run it at 25 megahertz frontside bus, you could get it running. It would have that brown with artifacting all over the place, but it would still run. But it would get the same score as you do at 16.67 megahertz ISA bus speed. Here, it at least gets better now that it's clocked at 60 megahertz memory clock. And I should probably get the sticker back on that thing. I've just been trying to figure out ways of just making it go just a pinch faster because of that, because it seemed like maybe the bottleneck was no longer the ISA bus, it was now starting to be the card itself was bottlenecking everything. And clearly I was right on that one, actually. I do kind of hope that maybe we could squeeze out like another frame by just replacing these because what happens is these add like a 15 nanosecond delay in the data. That's almost like a wait state. If you look at the motherboard here, you can also see another. Okay, you can't see because the writing on it's terrible. But the motherboard itself also uses 74 LS 245s to interact with the ISA cards as well. So you have a 15 nanosecond delay here, or up to, it's like up to 20 nanoseconds actually, but like be closer to like 12 nanosecond delay here. Get another 12 nanosecond delay here. That's 24 nanoseconds, and a cycle for at 25 megahertz is 40 nanoseconds, and that's like half of wait state right there basically, or a little over half because it's 24 not 40, but that might actually squeeze just a little more. Now my concern is that I accidentally because it runs, and then it would run faster, that the 60 megahertz memory clock won't be enough. But I mean, it's worth a shot, and you can see that I actually managed to get it to run. And I do need to add heatsink on yonder AT&T DAC, but because I have a feeling that's why it's the score was coming up inconsistently. But yeah, you know what? We're doing this anyway. This way you can see it on the right headed side. Gold Star Prime 2, I disabled pretty much everything except for the IDE. Didn't really need to, but I did because I just didn't want because I was trying to actually get this to work with the AT4000, and it wouldn't boot with the AT4000 for some reason. So this WD-90C31, give me, like, seriously, Western Digital, you couldn't make anything sexier than that, which is under this heatsink now, which makes it a lot harder to show you the chip, but just trust me on it. Is the only video card that it looks like that, like even the Mac 64 or Mac 32s over yonder, then my pile of ISA cards that I've been trying to deal with all this stuff, doesn't even operate with this ISA controller at high speeds, like, so even at 16 megahertz. But this one will work at up to 25 megahertz, so I was just like, well, ISO only. ISO only. It works, and it works faster than the AT4000. Provided you don't have an overheating or other crazy things are happening, or whatever's causing issues. So, I think this should really, really be the last one at this point. There's not much else I can really do outside of what I'm going to probably try to do is do that modification that I mentioned. I might not even get around to it, but that was like one of the things I've been like, yeah, I should probably do that. It's probably probably would be easy enough to do, because they're surface mount and you can get the solder off of them a lot easier than you can get through the through holes. Although some parts of me is doubting that a little bit, because I might accidentally pull up some solder pads. I can't get a Pentium overdrive on here. Even if I could, I probably would have to run it at some really ridiculously low speed. Might not work faster than this thing does. I looked into trying to get better timed cache. It's probably possible. You just need to make your own adapter board and get some surface mount components, because the 10 nanoseconds really don't exist, at least from this brand. So if you do see some 10 nanosecond cache for this brand, for this size anyway, that's not real. There's other brands that will send the 10 nanosecond cache. The timings on the RAM, but didn't seem like it would matter. And I'm not even using UVLB, so a lot of these other settings over here don't even matter at all. Because versus Visa local bus, and see, because of the way this was working on at the 16.67 megahertz ISO speed, I was hoping this would get 45 frames per second, but clearly it gets over 40, but it doesn't get much over 40. So kind of disappointed, but it's what it is. Like the graph, and it's like they're so close together at the normal like 8 megahertz or whatever it is that's supposed to be the bus is supposed to be operating at, and then it comes apart and then gets really far apart at 16.67, and then it comes back down together because the WD-90 C31 doesn't really go much further up, and the ET4000 just keeps going like in almost like a straight line. So yeah, I think I've hit the limits of what I had. Well, what's reasonable even. Even this sort of seems a little unreasonable, but I mean, it didn't take very long for me to figure out what how the timings were and things like that. And just took a little bit more experimentation, because I had to figure out whether or not I was going faster or slower, if I did one or the other, because the last time I looked at these kind of speed jumpers, the jumper was 1. In this case, the jumper is 0. So if you want a 0 in the 0 column, you solder the joint together. If you want the 1, you don't solder the joint together. Makes things a little confusing when they do things the other direction, because because what this is doing is the pin is getting grounded, which to me feels like a 0, but. Okay, I've rambled way too long on this one. But, keep your eye out for counterfeit proms. This is probably a counterfeit prom. It looks like they got sanded down. Okay, there's your PSA. I'm just goofy at this point. No, I probably should edit some of this out, but I think like I said, I think I'm done. And for vswitchzero, look at your RAM, your memory timing, and see if that's the memory and clock speed, and see if that's causing issues, because you got to have a timing circuit in there. Hopefully, it's not directly attached to the ET4000. If it's directly attached to the ET4000, I probably wouldn't mess with it. But if it isn't, and you find some fun jumpers, you might be able to get that to cooperate a little better on higher speeds and actually get some results out of it. Alright, let's cut this off at 20 minutes. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2,